All right. Hello. Good morning. This is my chapter 11 blog. Um, and yeah, the questions are kind of long, so we're just going to take it step by step here, starting with how can we apply contemporary understanding of motivation to how we grade? So, like this whole book has been about, we're to make grades that are equitable and precise, and also focused on motivation. So encouraging students to have a growth mindset and to have a mindset towards learning rather than just making the grade, right? So that's what this is all referring to with motivation. I thought it was really interesting towards the beginning of the chapter. It talked about that psychological experiment where they gave different groups of students an opportunity to make a drawing, and then one group was told they were going to get a reward, one group wasn't told but they were still given a reward after, and one group didn't get an award. But the level of work and the level of motivation stayed the same. So where us as teachers are often extrinsically motivating our students with hopes of like good grades or extra credit or whatever it is, oftentimes it's not really that helpful, that external motivation. What they talked about instead was having that kind of internal motivation, mostly led by the opportunity for redemption. So if they don't do something well, then the student will have a chance to show their knowledge again, or do a retake or something like that to show that they actually do know it, and to kind of save themselves from that grade. And I think that's really valuable, and something that I've seen in my class as well. For all of my summative assessments, I offer some sort of retake opportunity for students who score less than a 70%, and students take advantage of that, and they are motivated to not have to do that extra assignment, but if they do, then they're definitely motivated to do it, even though it's not required of them, so that they get the grade. Maybe they are still motivated by the grade at that point, but it's having that redo definitely helps them out a lot, I would say. So let's say, why are retakers and redos so important in the learning process, and how can our grading practices accommodate them? So I think I kind of just answered that. My summative assessments all have retake opportunities. My formative assessments and small classwork assignments, homework assignments don't. Partially because most of the time I grade just on completion. So if they do it and give effort, most of the time they'll get all full points on those types of assignments. So there's no real need. But also that's where they're learning. So I expect them to make a few more mistakes. And it would be a lot more work for me and a lot more work for them if I gave them a retake opportunity for every single thing. So it's just the summative assessment. And like I said, that has been pretty helpful as well. Just giving them that second opportunity rather than like, this is your one shot, if you don't do it then I got nothing for you. That's not very motivating. So looking at the other questions, when in your professional life have you been given a redo? Who offered it to you, and why do you think you got the second chance? This is a tough one because I feel like in the professional world a lot of times there's not very many redos. I thought of a time when I was in college and then really busy week, just totally spaced and forgot to do an assignment for one of my classes. And it was a pretty small class, so my professor actually emailed me and said, hey, I didn't receive this assignment from you. And I very bluntly said, yeah, I'm really sorry. It was a really busy week, I had a lot going on, and I forgot to do it. I'm sorry. And then he did actually give me a second chance. He said, thank you for your candor and your honesty. That's okay. If you can do it by tonight, I'll still accept it for full points. And then I was just kind of blown away. I was like, what? That's awesome. That's crazy. And then I was able to kind of have the benefit of going through that assignment and getting the knowledge out of that, making sure I still got the points for it, versus before I wouldn't have done it and I wouldn't have learned anything, I guess. So that was really cool. And then, was there a time when you were asked to demonstrate competence and you weren't given a second chance? Why weren't you given that chance? Excuse me. Like I said, I feel like that's most things. You do it once and then you either do well or you don't. And I think we're not given a second chance just based on time, and we're always moving really fast. So yeah, I don't know, but there's plenty of situations. I can't really think of one off the top of my head, but a lot of times where I'm like, man, I wish I could have had that conversation again, or I wish I could have given that presentation again, or whatever it is, I could have done a little bit better. Oh, I didn't even see this bottom part of the question. Did you ask for it or believe that you could? I never really thought about it. So maybe if I did ask, I would have been given a second chance. Who knows? Let's see. Okay, so how much of a motivator is hope? I think it's huge, right? So it's part of that intrinsic motivation. It's coming from within. The students have that mindset of, I know that I can do this. I know that there's hope. Even if I fail, there'll be an opportunity to do it again. And I think that the book offered a lot of different ways that we can bring hope into grading. So one of them is just the renaming grades. So from page 164, it says, here's an example of how middle school sought to increase motivation by renaming the levels of performance in its grading scale. So instead of 0 to 4 or A to F, the school titled its levels as exceeding standards, meeting standards, approaching standards, not yet met, and insufficient evidence. So during my student teaching and a little bit into my first year of teaching, I did a practice similar to that, but it was one step behind, I guess. So instead of A through F scale, we did the 0 to 4 scale on the standards-based grading. And that seemed really motivating, and it softened the blow for students who didn't do very well. But I like the idea of like exceeding standards, or meeting standards or not yet meeting standards. So I think it gives students something tangible to look at and say, okay, well, I'm not meeting the standard, so I need to work on that. And it gives them an opportunity to improve in a specific area, rather than just saying, oh, I failed, and then having that be the end of it, right? So the 0 to 4 scale or the renaming grading is great. The minimum grading I thought was an interesting piece of information. I see the idea of like, okay, they would still be failing with the 50%, so we can just give them that half grade. But I think we run the risk of students who just fail like one particular part or one particular assignment, having that minimum grading really altering the accuracy of their grade. So if they're getting all B's, and then they like fail 2 sections, that would be a 50%. So maybe they still have a B minus, versus maybe they should have like a C or C minus. Or if we're changing it to here, maybe they're meeting standards and then they should be approaching standards, just because we're kind of boosting up those low grades. So I think that's a problem with it. So overall, good strategy, but maybe we have to rethink that just a little bit. Then how would the commitment to mandatory retakes align or conflict with your school's vision? What would you have to change for your classroom or your school to commit to mandatory retakes? What would make it difficult? What would your school do to make it easier to make retakes mandatory? I don't think retakes should be mandatory, because it should be up to the student to say like, hey, I have an opportunity here, I want to take it. And if they don't want to take it, then that's fine. They can have the grade that they receive. I think one of the issues with mandatory retakes would be a lot of teachers having to track down their less motivated students and say, hey, I need you to do this. And then it would seem kind of aggressive and like we're forcing the student to do something that they don't want to do, or adding on to their already really heavy workload by saying, hey, this thing that you already got off your plate, you have to do it again. So I think that would be a little bit difficult. I think there would be pushback from teachers who don't give retakes, because then they would have a lot of extra work to do. They probably should be giving retakes, but I know a lot of teachers at my school do not. So and just overall cohesion and making sure every classroom has that same policy, I think would be difficult, just because each teacher kind of has their own style. But yeah, so I like the idea of grading for the sake of that hope and a growth mindset and redemption from a poor grade and opportunity for retakes. So I'm excited to hear what you guys have to say too.